Hello everybody and welcome back to Rishi Outposts. Today I'm not so thrilled to be talking to you guys about Boba Fett's ship, more or less commonly known as the Slave One, depending on how diehard of a Star Wars fan you are. I'm guessing if you're watching this video, you're probably very used to calling it the Slave One. But recently there's been a little bit of controversy over the name of the ship, and today I want to try to break it down and bring you guys a level-headed take on this hot subject. This controversy resurfaced the other day when a private press release was given to a host of clickbait machine websites like IGN. For those of you who don't know what a private press release is, I didn't really know what that was before this story came up. It's basically when certain journalists are given access to a story by the company before it officially announces said story. Believe it or not, Rishi Outpost doesn't receive any of those. But in this private press release regarding several variant covers for the War of the Bounty Hunter comics set to release in September, included the names of prominent bounty hunters and their ships, and that Boba Fett's is called the Firespray instead of the Slave One. We actually have some of these covers, and as the article begrudgingly has to admit, neither Firespray nor any of the other bounty hunter ships are named on the cover, just random tidbits of ship specs. So all we have is the word blurb of this press release. And this same press release has other really basic errors, like reversing the first and last name of one of the prominent bounty hunters that's on the same list where it says that the Firespray is what they're calling Boba Fett's ship. With this, we're left to assume that the information here is either accidentally partly wrong at best or purposefully inflammatory at worst. And knowing how a lot of these media outlets are, I think you guys know which one I think it is. Now, this controversy actually dates back to late June when some new LEGO Star Wars products were announced, and one of the new sets was called Boba Fett's Starship. This alone probably wouldn't have raised many eyebrows, as LEGO sets normally marketed towards kids, or more specifically the parents of kids, often name ships by their owner rather than the official in-universe name of the ship. Examples of this include calling it General Grievous's Starfighter rather than the Soulless One, and the Bad Batch Attack Shuttle rather than the Havoc Marauder, as it's known in-universe. But it wasn't just the announcement of the Boba Fett Starship LEGO set that sparked intense online reaction. It was a curious little quote from Jens Kronevald Fredrickson. Sorry if I got that name wrong. That was like my fourth attempt, and it was the best I got. The design director for LEGO Star Wars products, when asked why the Slave One name was being dropped from the set, Fredrickson said, "Everybody is. It's probably not something which has been announced publicly, but it is just something Disney doesn't want to use anymore." Now, this 22 word long quote probably has the highest word to outrage ratio since midichlorians, but let's think about what this statement might really mean, rather than me encouraging you to believe that it means the worst thing you think it might mean, so that you'll be as angry as possible and keep rage watching my YouTube videos, like a lot of other Star Wars YouTubers have chosen to do. The way I see things, there's three likely interpretations of what's happening here, assuming that Fredrickson is not speaking from a place of ignorance, and considering his relatively high position at LEGO Star Wars, I'm guessing he's not just talking out of his behind. The first thing that comes to mind when I read this is that it could be an accidental spoiler for the Book of Boba Fett. Boba may very well rename his ship for a completely story-driven reason in the show. Why would he do this? Well, Boba in The Mandalorian Season 2 was acting pretty differently than the only cares about himself heartless mercenary who we know from the original trilogy and other Star Wars content that he appears in between the Clone Wars and before Return of the Jedi. He clearly seems to have a new or renewed sense of honor and purpose after his time in the Sarlacc pit and with the Sand People on Tatooine. So the meaning of Slave One might not be relevant to the way he sees the galaxy in the same way that it used to. That seems pretty plausible to me, and I actually think that that could probably be done well. But of course, you have to make up your own mind on whether you agree. If that is the case, this is just LEGO getting ahead of that on their products, which is something they have to do in order to get consumers what they want as quickly as possible. The second possible explanation is that Disney does want to remove the name Slave One from all of their marketing. This seems quite plausible to me as well. I don't want to get political here, but I think we can all agree we live in a bit of a strange time, at least here in the US. People are getting fired for 10-year-old tweets, people are deeply upset about logos and sports team names, and I'm not going to tell you whether any of that is reasonable or which parts you should or shouldn't be upset about, but I think most people can agree that regardless of where you stand on all that, it's a strange time to be running things. So it stands to reason that corporate suits at Disney might think it best to sort of hide the name Slave One under the rug for the time being until things settle down a little bit and society's ideas of what's acceptable sort of re-solidify one way or the other. But in this scenario, they wouldn't be changing the in-universe name of the ship, just kind of hiding it from public scrutiny, because it's less likely to catch someone's ire when it's just said in the season 2 finale of the Clone Wars from 10 years ago, rather than plastered on toy boxes in stores all over the country and really all over the world. Now, if this scenario is true, I don't care that much because they wouldn't be messing up the integrity of the universe. This would just be purely a business decision, and I don't really know anything about business, so I couldn't tell you whether or not that's a good decision on that front or not. The third possible explanation, and the one I'm sure you clicked on this video to hear me talk about, is that Disney and Lucasfilm are full-on changing the name from Slave One to something else, both in the marketing and in the retcon in-universe, because they think it's offensive to people. If this were the case, I would be upset. The Slave One isn't just a ship name that appears on toy sets or in reference books, like Grievous's Starfighter Soulless One. The Slave One is mentioned by name in the Clone Wars, which not only happens to be my favorite piece of Star Wars media, but has been called by Kathleen Kennedy as being an immovable object of the franchise, along with the 6 original films made by George Lucas. This would be a retcon that, while technically not having serious implications in the universe, would change a pretty well-established piece of lore that's been accepted for a long time, and parts of the canon that came directly from George Lucas. And let's be real here. The word slave should not be offensive to anyone. Slavery is bad. Anyone with a quarter of a brain and half a heart knows that. But for that matter, war is bad, and the actual franchise is called Star Wars. These are bad things. Bad things happen in the world, and they also happen in this fictional universe. It really is embarrassing on the part of Disney and Lucasfilm that their form of activism or positive change in the world is to change this name, if that's what's really happening here. So which of these do I think is most likely? Well, I think it's probably going to be a mix of the first and second options that I laid out. I do think that yes, Disney is worried about potential criticism in this strange age of people being validated for being offended about anything and everything, and so they don't want the word slave on any of their products. Make no mistake, Disney is a corporation that often treats its employees quite poorly and only cares about social justice if they think it will affect their profit margins. There's nothing progressive about the company. But I also think they know they can't go back and change the name of the ship from its previous appearances. I think it will probably get an in-universe story-driven name change in the upcoming Book of Boba Fett, and that Boba Fett's ship, or whatever the new name is, will be used in the marketing going forward. If this is what happens, I think it's a bit silly if Slave One is dropped from like the old merchandise, if they decide that in 30 years they want to go back and do Boba Fett's ship from The Empire Strikes Back. I think that would be weird if they were calling it whatever the new name is, and if they were just so done with the Slave One that they weren't going to call it that from then. That's how it was on some of the old boxes, so I think that would be strange, but it wouldn't be the end of the world for me because it would still be maintaining the integrity of the universe. Ironically, doing this would only drag more attention to the name, which is probably what Disney and Lucasfilm are specifically trying to avoid, but I think that the executives there are so out of their element when it comes to stuff like this, which, to be fair, it's a complicated time, but I think it's a miscalculation that I could easily see them making. It would be really funny, though, if in December the Book of Boba Fett comes out and they call it Slave One by name and they don't change the name. It would be really funny if these months of outrage were just completely for nothing, though. Well, that's all I have for you guys this time. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you think is going on with the Slave One. Remember that a key part of this channel is fostering a community where civil discussions prevail in Star Wars, so be sure to keep it respectful no matter what you think. Be sure to leave a like and please share this video with anyone who is really worked up about this so that cooler heads might prevail. As always, thank you for watching and may the Force be with you.